Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. In this episode, we bring you the incredible story of Colonel Leon William Johnson, a United States Army Air Corps commander whose courage in World War II earned him the Medal of Honor. On August 1, 1943, Johnson led his B-24 Liberators into the heart of one of the most heavily defended targets in Europe, the Ploesti oil refineries in Axis-controlled Romania. What unfolded was a mission unlike any other, a low-level strike through walls of anti-aircraft fire, aggressive enemy fighter attacks, and an environment choked with smoke, flames, and the constant threat of exploding fuel. Against staggering odds, Johnson's leadership and skill carried his men through the gauntlet, crippling a vital enemy resource and writing his name into the annals of military aviation history. You can find more about the Medal of Honor, military history, and stories like this at trackpads.com. In the summer of 1943, the skies over Europe were a battleground where every mission carried the weight of nations. Among those who rose to meet the challenge was Colonel Leon William Johnson of the United States Army Air Corps. His name would be forever tied to one of the most audacious and dangerous air raids of the Second World War, the low-level bombing of the Ploesti oil refineries in Axis-controlled Romania. On August 1, 1943, Johnson's leadership, skill, and unwavering determination would be tested against some of the most heavily defended targets on Earth. This is the story of a man who, when cut off from his main formation, refused to turn back. Flying into a storm of anti-aircraft fire, enemy fighter attacks, and towering columns of smoke and flame, Johnson led his bombers with the calm precision of a seasoned commander. In that moment, the mission was no longer about survival. It was about striking a decisive blow against the enemy's lifeblood. His actions that day would earn him the Medal of Honor and secure his place among the most courageous aviators in American history. By mid-1943, the Allies had begun to shift from a defensive stance to a strategy of relentless offensive operations against Axis strongholds in Europe. The industrial lifelines of Nazi Germany, its oil, transportation, and manufacturing networks, became prime targets. Among these, the oil refineries at Ploesti, Romania, stood out as both a vital resource and a formidable challenge. Producing a significant portion of Germany's fuel, Ploesti was not just another target. It was the beating heart of Axis mobility, powering tanks, aircraft, and mechanized forces across multiple fronts. The operation, codenamed Tidal Wave, was conceived as a daring, low-level strike to maximize bombing accuracy and inflict crippling damage. Flying just a few hundred feet above the ground, American heavy bombers would navigate over hostile terrain, avoiding early radar detection but risking exposure to dense flak and aggressive fighter interception near the target. The mission required precision timing, flawless navigation, and exceptional courage from both pilots and crews. In the days leading up to August 1st, intelligence reports and aerial reconnaissance confirmed the defenses at Ploesti were among the most intense in the European theater. Anti-aircraft guns ringed the refineries, concealed in fields and rooftops, while German and Romanian fighter squadrons were stationed nearby, ready to pounce on any attackers. The low-level approach meant crews would be within range of everything from small arms fire to heavy-caliber flak. It was understood that the mission would be costly. Some estimates predicted losses as high as half the attacking force. The United States Army Air Forces assigned 5 bombardment groups to the strike, totaling 178 B-24 Liberators. These aircraft, designed for high-altitude missions, would be pushed to their limits, flying just above treetop level. The 44th Bombardment Group, part of the 2nd Bomb Division of the 9th Air Force, was placed under the command of Colonel Leon William Johnson. His role was critical to lead the 4th wave into the target after the initial formations had struck. The success of the mission depended on each wave hitting in sequence, overwhelming the defenses and ensuring complete destruction of refining capacity. The stakes were enormous. If successful, the attack could choke off Germany's fuel supply for months, forcing the Wehrmacht to curtail operations on multiple fronts. If it failed, the cost in men and machines could cripple the Allies' heavy bomber strength in the Mediterranean. For Johnson and his men, the mission was not just another sortie. It was a calculated gamble that could alter the course of the war in Europe. Personal background. Leon William Johnson was born on September 13, 1904, in Columbia, Missouri, a community where the values of hard work, discipline, and service were deeply rooted. Growing up in the American heartland, Johnson developed an early fascination with machinery and flight. Nurtured by the rapid advances in aviation during the early 20th century, this interest, combined with a strong academic record, eventually led him to seek a commission through one of the nation's most prestigious military institutions. In 1922, Johnson entered the United States Military Academy at West Point. His time there not only honed his leadership skills, but also instilled in him the disciplined mindset that would guide his career. Commissioned as a second lieutenant upon graduation in 1926, he chose to serve in the United States Army Air Corps, an emerging branch still defining its role in the nation's defense. Johnson's early postings exposed him to a variety of flight operations, from training assignments to experimental mission planning, experiences that would later prove invaluable in combat. Throughout the 1930s, Johnson's career reflected the Air Corps' growing pains and ambitions. He completed advanced flight training, gained expertise in bomber tactics, and held positions in both operational units and staff roles. His professionalism and technical skill earned him a reputation as a capable officer who could balance strategic planning with the realities of flying and maintaining aircraft under demanding conditions. By the time the United States entered World War II, he had risen steadily through the ranks, becoming a key figure in the development of long-range bombing doctrine. With the outbreak of global conflict, Johnson was assigned to command roles in the European and Mediterranean theaters, where the demands of large-scale air operations pushed him into increasingly complex missions. His command of the 44th Bombardment Group placed him at the center of the Allied strategic bombing campaign, where success depended on precision, timing, and the ability to inspire crews facing staggering odds. After the Ploesti mission, Johnson's career continued to ascend. He held senior commands, contributed to post-war air strategy, and eventually retired from the United States Air Force as a four-star general. His decorations included not only the Medal of Honor, but numerous other awards recognizing his leadership and valor. General Johnson passed away on November 10, 1997, leaving behind a legacy of service that spanned the formative years of American air power. His name remains etched in the history of military aviation, a testament to a life devoted to duty, courage, and country. Medal of Honor citation. For conspicuous gallantry in action and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty on August 1, 1943. Colonel Johnson, as commanding officer of a heavy bombardment group, led the formation of the aircraft of his organization, constituting the fourth element of the mass low-level bombing attack of the 9th United States Air Force against the vitally important enemy target of the Ploesti oil refinery. While proceeding to the target on this 2,400-mile flight, his element became separated from the leading elements of the mass formation in maintaining the formation of the unit while avoiding dangerous cumulus cloud conditions. Encountered over mountainous territory, though temporarily lost, he re-established contact with the third element and continued on the mission with this reduced force to the prearranged point of attack, where it was discovered that the target assigned to Colonel Johnson's group had been attacked and damaged by a preceding element. Though having lost the element of surprise upon which the safety and success of such a daring form of mission in heavy bombardment aircraft so strongly depended, Colonel Johnson elected to carry out his planned low-level attack despite the thoroughly alerted defenses, the destructive anti-aircraft fire, enemy fighter planes, the imminent danger of exploding delayed action bombs from the previous element, of oil fires and explosions, and of intense smoke obscuring the target. By his gallant courage, brilliant leadership, and superior flying skill, Colonel Johnson so led his formation as to destroy totally the important refining plants and installations which were the object of his mission. Colonel Johnson's personal contribution to the success of this historic raid and the conspicuous gallantry in action and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty demonstrated by him on this occasion constitutes such deeds of valor and distinguished service as have, during our nation's history, formed the finest traditions of our armed forces. Where valor was forged, what follows is a blend of recorded history and dramatized combat detail, created to immerse the listener in the sights, sounds, and emotions of the day, while remaining true to the known facts of Colonel Johnson's actions. The morning of August 1st, 1943, broke hot and clear over Benghazi, Libya. The pre-dawn darkness still clung to the horizon when the crews of the 44th Bombardment Group gathered near their B-24 Liberators. The men moved with quiet efficiency, each step purposeful, but the tension was unmistakable, a weight in the air that seemed to press down on every word, every glance. They already knew the target before the orders were given aloud: Ploesti. That name carried an ominous reputation. Rumors of its bristling defenses had preceded any formal briefing. Colonel Leon William Johnson stood before his men during final checks, his flight gear neat and secure, his voice steady but firm. He spoke not with the flair of a performer, but with the certainty of a commander who had weighed the odds and accepted them. His group would be the fourth wave into the target, following 3 other formations in a carefully timed sequence. The plan was brutally simple: fly low, strike hard, and get out alive. The odds were known, but there was no hesitation in Johnson's eyes. Engines came to life across the airfield, coughing smoke before settling into a deep, rhythmic growl. Ground crews hurried between aircraft, pulling chocks, checking connections, and giving the final hand signals. The sharp tang of aviation fuel mixed with the heavier scent of engine oil as the Liberators began to taxi. The first formations clawed into the sky, their wings burdened with bombs and fuel for the 2,400-mile round trip. The route carried them north, skirting the Mediterranean before angling toward the jagged mountains of the Balkans. Ahead, thick banks of cumulus clouds rose like fortresses. Johnson faced a decision that would define the mission's next phase: maintain tight formation and risk losing visual contact with the lead elements, or break apart in pursuit of visibility. He chose formation discipline. The Liberators threaded between cloud walls, engines straining, pilots easing throttles to hold positions. The radios crackled with clipped updates, compass readings, and reminders to watch fuel consumption. Somewhere beyond the cloud banks, the rest of the strike force pressed on, but Johnson's focus was on the planes in his care. When the group emerged from the cloud cover, the leading elements were gone. Johnson immediately recalculated. Within minutes, they sighted the third element and slid into position behind it. The formation was smaller now, but still formidable, and the target was drawing near. Dropping to just a few hundred feet above the ground, they raced across the Romanian countryside. The fields and villages blurred beneath them, startled civilians scattering at the roar overhead. Ahead, the sky above Ploesti churned with black smoke. The earlier waves had struck, and the defenses were fully awake. Flak began almost immediately, heavy guns pounding the air with black bursts that sent jagged metal spinning through the formation. Johnson's bomber shuddered as a near miss rocked its frame. From the intercom came the urgent calls: "Fighters incoming 3 o'clock high." Waist gunners pivoted their twin 50 caliber Brownings, sending streams of tracers into the diving Messerschmitts. The air filled with the overlapping smells of burnt powder, hot oil, and the bitter tang of smoke drifting from the burning refineries ahead. The target assigned to Johnson's group had already been hit, but he made his choice without pause. They would attack as planned. Surprise was gone, but the mission remained. Racing into the refinery complex, the Liberators roared over rail lines and looming oil tanks. Fire raged below, flames leaping high, heat waves distorting the view through the cockpit glass. The threat of detonating delayed action bombs from earlier waves was very real. Johnson led them straight into the heart of the inferno. Bomb bay doors yawned open and the rush of air buffeted the aircraft. "Steady, steady, bombs away," came the bombardier's call. The plane lifted slightly as its payload fell, the explosions seconds later sending shock waves that rattled teeth. Targets disappeared into towering fireballs, oil tanks rupturing into rivers of burning fuel. Through the chaos, Johnson kept the formation tight, weaving through smoke and skirting the deadly bursts of flak. Only when the last bomb had fallen and the target lay shattered did he turn toward the escape route. The withdrawal was every bit as dangerous as the attack. Still flying at low altitude, the Liberators pushed over the industrial edges of Ploesti into open farmland, engines screaming under maximum power. Johnson knew the defenders would not relent. The warning came over the intercom. "Fighters closing in fast, 6 o'clock low." Gunners swung turrets into position, the deep thump of the 50-caliber guns reverberating through the airframe. Behind them, the smoke of the refinery complex billowed skyward, marking their path like a beacon. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Romanian IR-80s slashed in at high speed, their cannons flashing. Johnson's voice came over the group frequency, calm but commanding. Maintain spacing, keep it tight. Don't give them an opening. The defensive fire from the bombers became a moving wall of lead, and the fighters began to break off in frustration. Crossing back over the rural farmlands, the terrain began to rise toward the Balkan foothills. Johnson dropped the formation even lower, using the contours to disrupt enemy attack runs. The tactic worked. Enemy pilots found their angles spoiled and their firing windows shortened. Sporadic flak still erupted from hastily emplaced guns along their route, the bursts close enough to rattle nerves. Fuel was now a quiet but pressing concern. Low-level flying had burned more than planned, and some aircraft had suffered damage that increased consumption. Johnson constantly scanned the sky, his instruments, and the relative positions of his bombers. Each correction to their route balanced speed, safety, and the need to keep every aircraft in the fight until the coastline was in sight. Over the Adriatic, the deep blue below was a welcome sight. But Johnson refused to relax. Even over open water, the formation held tight. Hours later, the coast of Allied-controlled North Africa rose on the horizon. Relief washed over the crews, but it was tempered by the sight of empty spaces where their comrades should have been. When Johnson's wheels touched down at Benghazi, the raid had exacted its price. Aircraft were gone, men were missing, but the Ploesti refineries lay in ruins. The gamble had been costly, but the strategic blow to Axis fuel supplies was real. Engines wound down into silence, and Johnson walked the flight line, speaking quietly to each crew that had made it back. No speeches, no ceremony, just the steady grip of a handshake, the unspoken bond of men who had survived one of the most dangerous missions of the war. The 44th had flown into hell and struck their blow, and under Johnson's leadership, they had lived up to the highest traditions of American air power. Reflections and lessons learned. The Ploesti raid stands as one of the most daring and hazardous missions in the history of aerial warfare, and Colonel Leon William Johnson's leadership provides enduring lessons for leaders in every field. His decision to press the attack, even after losing the element of surprise and facing fully alerted defenses, was not made lightly. It was a calculated choice that balanced mission necessity with the risks at hand. It showed that true leadership is defined by the ability to adapt instantly when plans collapse, without losing sight of the objective. In combat aviation, a commander's demeanor can influence the fate of the entire formation. Johnson's calm under withering fire kept the 44th Bombardment Group disciplined and effective. Panic spreads quickly in the air, but confidence can spread just as fast. His steady voice over the radio and his visible commitment to the mission reminded every crew member that they were part of a unified effort, even when chaos threatened to break them apart. The success of the mission also reflected a deep trust between Johnson and his men. The crews had trained exhaustively, learning to operate as one entity under extreme stress. That trust flowed both ways. Johnson relied on each gunner, navigator, and bombardier to execute their role flawlessly, while the men trusted his judgment to lead them out of danger. In any high-stakes operation, military, corporate, or otherwise, that level of mutual confidence can mean the difference between success and failure. Finally, the mission highlights the moral weight that comes with command. Johnson knew the risks to his men, yet he also understood the strategic importance of crippling Ploesti's oil production. In choosing to continue the attack, he bore the responsibility for those lives, a responsibility he accepted without hesitation. This selflessness, placing the mission and the greater cause above personal safety, is the mark of a leader whose influence extends far beyond the battlefield. Closing. Colonel Leon William Johnson's leadership at Ploesti is remembered not only for the extraordinary physical courage it demanded, but also for the moral courage it represented. On that August morning in 1943, he faced a chain of unforeseen challenges: the separation from the main formation, the loss of the element of surprise, and the relentless fury of a fully prepared enemy defense. At each turn, he responded with resolve, skill, and an unwavering commitment to the mission. His decisions under fire contributed to the crippling of a vital Axis fuel source and provided a lasting example of what it means to lead when the stakes are at their highest. His story is more than a chapter in the history of the Second World War. It is a lesson in the values that define true service: duty, perseverance, and the will to act decisively when failure is not an option. The Medal of Honor he received is a symbol not just of his own courage, but of the collective spirit of every airman who took part in that daring raid. To remember his deeds is to honor all who have stood in harm's way, choosing the path of commitment over retreat. His legacy endures in the traditions of the United States Air Force and in the enduring truth that leadership under fire can change the course of history.